Good evening, everyone. It is 7:30 on a Tuesday night, and I am counting down the days, counting down the hours, because I'm going on holiday to the south of France on Thursday. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I thought, what better way to burn an hour but doing another one of the Boxing Gossip live shows. I've only really worked out how to do this in the last week or so, but I've enjoyed it, and the feedback I've had so far has been relatively charitable. So I'm going to persist, going to do a few more of these. For me, it's more entertaining to have a bit of back and forth than just doing a video, speaking to myself. And, to be completely honest, I've done so many of those in the last year, kind of lives, that I opt to do them in this format a bit. As always, if you are watching this, if you are joining, please do comment in the chat. I'm going to, refer to the chat throughout the course of the video, and we'll consistently go back and forth to it, answer any questions that come up. And I always do say that when I'm doing these live shows, happy to take any questions answered. I get a few emails doing requests, and I know I can't get to them all, so very, very happy to, cover off anything that comes up or anything that you'd like to hear discussed during the course of this video. So yeah, please do get in touch in the chat on that note. Now, getting into it. Just before I talk about the topic in hand, which is who should Floyd Mayweather fight next, a few plugs as always. I've got a video which I've filmed that will be going up later tonight about Joseph Parker, exciting Kiwi heavyweight. If you haven't seen this guy and you like your heavyweight boxing, you must check him out. His opponent, Kiyotaro Fujimoto, has pulled out of the fight, and he has a new replacement, Bowie Tapau. I've done a video on that. I've watched his opponent fight against Brian Jennings and Malik Scott, so I've got a few opinions on that. And I've also got a video that's been filmed that will go up tonight on Cuban heavyweight prospect Luis Ortiz, who's another one I'm a big fan of. So if you like your heavyweight boxing, please do check back. Please do look at the channel. Probably be posted after this goes up. Ultratech Sports, who I did a collaboration with. I understand the third and final part of a collaboration has gone up on his channel. So please check that out if you haven't already. Shout out to him. And let's get into it. As I say, throughout the course of this video, it's going to be the broad discussion point, and I'm not going to police this too formally, but the broad discussion point: who should Floyd Mayweather fight in his next and last fight, plus any questions answered. So I'm going straight into the chat, and I'm being joined by Jack. Good evening, Jack. Thanks for the constant support. I really appreciate it. Jack says, guess who's here already? It's me, of course. Did you check out George Arias? He's very exciting. I checked that video the guy linked in here yesterday. Yes, I did check it out. Yeah, fair play for the viewers for picking up on him. I mean, that shows me that the guys who are watching my channel are genuine, knowledgeable, hardcore boxing fans. Because this is a guy with 4 pro fights from the States. So fair play. I'm on the Guinness tonight. Fair play to people who picked him out. He's a very small heavyweight. He is, I can see the obvious comparisons to Mike Tyson. He's a guy who is a small power puncher, likes to get inside, likes to throw combinations, likes to throw punches and bunches. He has some, he's a really interesting fighter to watch. What I would say, and I always have concerns about this, especially with, shorter, smaller heavyweights, I have concerns when he steps up in class, because he's been fighting, opponents with very, very losing records. And he does look to be like a devastating fighter, big power, etc. But I have concerns. How will he deal with a rangy heavyweight who throws a jab? It's very easy to get inside in the kind of heavyweights he's been fighting. It's very easy to look like a big puncher at this level. For me, he looks like he's got a lot of skill sets. And I think the heavyweight division is missing a fighter like him. There isn't a Mike Tyson. There isn't a David Tua, active in the division. And as a result, I often gravitate to Derek Chisora, who's a much lesser fighter, because he's the kind of guy who can operate with that style. So, yeah, this George Arias certainly is one to keep my eyes on. Much appreciate everyone who, pointed me in that direction. So, yeah, I did check that out, Jack. Sarah says, hey, Boxing Gossip, liking this new live format. Thank you very much, Sarah. How are you doing tonight? Thanks for joining in. I actually saw you, I know you've commented on a few of my videos before. I saw you on the Bay Lorick live vid the other day. I wasn't watching live, I watched it delayed. I saw you getting into it with some guy who was commenting all sorts of nonsense on Poor Ingram's video. So, yeah, thanks for joining in, Sarah. Jack has said, just tweeted out your live stream link again. And yeah, they've done a good job of that. Hello, Sarah. So, yeah, we've got Jack and Sarah in the chat. Anyway, let's get to the topic in hand. We have Floyd Mayweather. And at present, he's 48-0. We understand he's going to be fighting in September. That's not a million miles away. We're in late June now, and we don't have any announcement on his opponent. So we've got the whole of July, the whole of August, and then we're into it in September. We're probably 9, 10, 11 weeks away from Mayweather stepping into the ring, potentially for his last fight. Who knows if he's going to go and fight for 50-0. At present, this could be his last fight. We know that this is the end of his Showtime deal. We know that he said he was going to retire after this. And right now, the names he's given reporters are Andre Berto and Kareem Mayfield. Now, I think I speak on behalf of the boxing community when I say that those two fights do not get me excited. Andre Berto, Kareem Mayfield, they are not in my top 10 at 147 pounds. They are not in my top 15, actually, at 147 pounds. Yeah, I won't do a ranking in order, but who are we looking at welterweight at present? At the top of the division is going to be Floyd, Manny, Marquez, Bradley, Brook, Khan, Furman, Porter, Maidana, and then below them you've got the likes of Guerrero, Errol Spence, Devon Alexander, Ortiz, Rios Alvarado, Frankie Gavin, Leonard Bundu, those sort of guys. Jeff Horn, the Australian welterweight prospect. There's a lot of guys who certainly are ahead of Kareem Mayfield. Andre Berto you'd probably throw into that mix. Maybe not top 10, maybe not 15, but thereabouts. Sarah says he must be trolling with those two. I can see it being Danny Garcia. I agree with you there, Sarah. He probably is trolling with those two. It's not going to be Danny Garcia, though. He's got a fight against Paulie Malignaggi booked. So the dates are going to work for him because realistically, as I say, Floyd is only 9, 10, 11 weeks away from stepping into the ring for this fight. And I don't have an exact date on Danny Garcia's fight against Paulie Malignaggi, but I think we're still something like 4, 5, 6 weeks away from that. So I don't think the time frames are going to work out there. Garcia is a guy I've long seen Floyd as potentially fighting. He's marketable, he's unbeaten, and you could make a solid case for him meriting the fight. The difficulty with Garcia is, in my opinion, he's really lacking momentum at present. He's when he beat Amir Khan, when he beat Lucas Matisse, when he beat Zab Judah, maybe that was the time for him to step up to 147 and to position himself in the Mayweather sweepstakes. Right now, he's coming off poor performances against Mauricio Herrera. People thought he lost the fight. The awful fight with Rod Salka. The controversial Lamont Peterson fight that people thought he lost. He's lost all of his momentum, Garcia, and the way he performed against Lamont Peterson, And I scored that fight to Danny Garcia that night. But the way he performed against Lemieux Peterson, it is impossible to see Garcia beating Mayweather based on that. To be honest, right now, I'm inclined to pick Paulie Malignaggi over him. And I know that's controversial, but I think Malignaggi's got a style to beat him. Garcia doesn't like a jabber, he doesn't like a mover. So that's my thoughts on that one. Jack says, oh, isn't Garcia fighting Paulie Malignaggi? Floyd's having a right laugh behind the cameras about Mayfield and about Bertrand. So, yeah, spot on. Sarah says, good point. Not sure when that fight is. Do you know when it is? I don't know off the top of my head, I'm afraid. And because I'm doing this on the laptop, I can't box circuit now. But I'm pretty sure that fight will put Danny Garcia straight out of the running. There was, of course, a big welterweight fight this weekend, Adrian Broner versus Sean Porter. And I know the Porters have been very vocal that they now want the Mayweather fight, having got through Adrian Broner. I guess they're looking at the fact that Marcus Maidana beat Broner and got the fight, so why can't they? I guess the difficulty is that while Sean Porter did put in a good performance against Adrian Broner, he's kind of put himself in a difficult position with the loss to Kell Brook, because Sean Porter is not an easy fight for anyone. You know, I could see Sean Porter causing Floyd some stylistic problems due to the way he fights. Don't get me wrong, I'd pick Floyd in that fight. But Porter's so young, he's so strong, he's so athletic. That's not an easy fight for anyone to fight. It's not an easy fight for Floyd Mayweather. And because Porter has lost, because he took a defeat against Kell Brook, I personally think that the risk-reward doesn't add up, for Sean Porter. Somebody like Keith Thurman, for example, is not at a dissimilar stage of his career to Sean Porter, but he's got this unbeaten thing about him where people think he could be the next big thing, the next Floyd Mayweather, the next top of the division. There's a big reward to fighting him. If Floyd fights and beats Keith Thurman, is Floyd beating the next generation of fighter? Very possibly, very possibly. Whereas with Sean Porter, it's kind of hard to say that based on the fact that he's lost. If Floyd has a very difficult fight against Sean Porter, even if he wins, it's going to make Floyd, people will say, oh, well, Kell Brook beat him, why couldn't Floyd beat him like that? Or something of that nature. So I don't see Danny Garcia in the running. I don't see Kareem Mayfield in the running. I don't see Andre Berto in the running. And I don't see Adrian Broner in the running. So we're working hard. We're eliminating a few people here. In terms of the divisions, I see it at most likely 147, potentially at 154, or in this day and age, who's to say, it could be a catchweight. I think all the talk about Floyd fighting like Golovkin or Cotto is unlikely. The Miguel Cotto fight at 155 wouldn't be crazy. I could see that fight happening. But I believe Cotto Canelo is very, very serious. So that would probably rule both Cotto and Canelo out. All the rumours, all the talk I'm hearing is that fight is definitely going to be made, and that negotiations are moving and negotiations are going very well with that one. So, based on that, it probably rules both of those guys out. I think the Golovkin fight is unrealistic. I don't think Floyd, Golovkin isn't the name on a sort of global basis. Obviously they're so far apart in weight differences. I just don't think that one's realistic. So I think based on other engagements, there is a hardcore of about 4 or 5 fighters who are potential. So I'm going to get onto that hardcore now and kind of discuss who, in my opinion, is the shortlist. As I get into it, we may find that it's actually more like 6 or 7 or 8 fighters rather than 4 or 5. But we'll do my best to cut it down. Jack says Malignaggi versus Garcia is set for August 1st. Brook versus Mayweather, or Furman versus Mayweather. then I'd be excited. Rough Mus, who's joined, says, can't see Floyd fighting anyone too dangerous. He took the Pacquiao fight, and I can see him taking an easier fight. He should fight Furman, Brook, Bradley, or Porter, but he won't. Yeah, I mean, Bradley's got a fight, hasn't he? Is it against Jesse Vargas? I think that's next week. So depending on how that fight goes, that could rule Bradley out. Yeah, Bradley has a very tough fight. The date might come too quick for him. If he loses, obviously he's ruled out. I understand that Bradley's moving up in weight class anyway. Furman's got a fight against Luis Collazo. That pretty much puts him out of the running, doesn't it? Yeah, Kell Brook, I know Hearn says he's still available. Sean Porter, as I've already mentioned, I don't think that he's in the running. Ralph Muss also says Khan will be good to see too, but in a way, I don't want it to be him, just so Khan doesn't have the satisfaction. Yeah, I mean, with Khan, there's the intangible about Ramadan. But I think if you look at other engagements, I think that Furman and Bradley are very, very unlikely. I think Porter is very, very unlikely. So if we look at who the potentials are, it's Amir Khan, and I don't know how big an issue the Ramadan thing is. I'm not, overly in the loop on that. So, yeah, I've heard certain people saying Amir Khan can't fight because of Ramadan. I've heard other people saying that Amir could fight within Ramadan. So I don't know, but I'm not going to discount him based on that because I don't know. So I think Khan versus Mayweather is certainly one to throw into the mix. I think Brook versus Mayweather is certainly one to consider. It appears that the momentum has moved away from Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Mayweather. There was a lot of talk about there being a rematch. That seems to have dissipated somewhat as of now. I know Juan Manuel Marquez was calling out a fight, but for me, I see that as unlikely. So, I mean, who else is there out there? Who else is available? We're ruling out a lot of these guys. We're ruling out a lot of these guys based on their dates, based on their availability. Cotto and Canelo are two possibilities, and I'm keen not to rule those guys out. But as I say, from my understanding, those guys already have big plans to fight each other. So that would obviously rule both of those guys out. Now, until until that fight is officially made, until that fight is signed, sealed, and delivered, I'm not going to rule them out. But I think that's unlikely. But I mean, that leaves me with a fairly weak shortlist at this end. I mean, there's talk about Floyd fighting really unrealistic guys like Erislandy Lara or like Demetrius Andrade. But, that's not going to sell. These are not names. These are not guys that Floyd is, realistically going to fight. So that's why I don't completely rule the Pacquiao rematch out. I don't completely rule Kell Brook out. I don't completely rule Amir Khan out. I mean, Floyd's been so dominant. He's beaten so many fighters, and so many of the other names are in tough matchups where they're already facing off against each other. The list actually isn't that long now of potential Floyd opponents. So let me know if you're watching this live. How many opponents have I missed out there? How many have I missed out? Or are there additional names out there that are potentially in the sweepstakes? Because outside of Khan, Brook, Pacquiao, maybe Cotto and Canelo, I don't see the list being that long. I'm ruling out Garcia. I'm ruling out Furman. I'm ruling out Bradley. We'll have to see. Jack says, I think that Khan versus Mayweather would be a schooling. Khan is a B-level fighter at welterweight. I think that's harsh. I'd say B-level fighters at welterweight are Alexander, Collazo and Algieri, and he's consistently proven that he can beat those guys. To be honest with you, Jack, I agree, he looked absolutely terrible last time out, but I actually thought he looked really good against Devon Alexander. If you consider that Devon Alexander relatively recently beat the likes of Lucas Matisse, you consider that Devin Alexander was at least competitive in the Sean Porter fight. Amir Khan gave him a bit of a beating, to be honest. So I don't think Khan is terrible at 147 at all. In fact, I still definitely class Khan as an A-level fighter. It's just what I would say in my eyes is that Khan doesn't quite carry the size advantage and power that he did at the lower weights. For me, he's a more devastating fighter at 140. As for the schooling thing, Khan is very good when allowed to dominate from the outside. Very, very good. Look, there are obvious ways of causing Khan problems. If you hit him hard and you're a big puncher, you can cause him problems. If you get inside and work his body and push him back, like Lamont Peterson did, and quite unbelievably like Chris Algieri did, you're going to cause him problems. The difficulty with Khan Mayweather is I still see that. I honestly see that as a competitive fight stylistically. I honestly do. Because Khan's a bigger guy than Mayweather. Both guys rely on speed, but Khan's probably the quicker guy. And whilst Mayweather is much technically better and much more defensively responsible, Khan likes to fight from range on the outside, and I think that's the kind of challenge that Mayweather will present him with. So I don't rule Khan out of a Mayweather fight, as controversial as that sounds. I don't. I also don't rule Brook out of that fight. I think those two are both competitive fights that I'd certainly pay to see and certainly be interested in. Rough Musk, would you guys pay for Mayweather versus Pacquiao 2? No. I mean, I don't see that as a competitive fight whatsoever. But that, it would obviously be a much bigger sell to the casual fans who buy these things compared to, say, Mayweather Pacquiao 2 does much better numbers than Mayweather Brook 1, in my opinion. Jack says, what about GGG? I don't see that being realistic, given the size difference, given the fact that Golovkin's pretty unheard of outside of the boxing hardcore. Ali, good evening, Ali. How you doing? He says it's got to be calm based on dates and availability. You have to rely on the American. Floyd has the domestic pay-per-view audience. He may fight Oscar De La Hoya. Yeah, I heard rumours about that, but De La Hoya's categorically ruled it out. Yeah, I mean, the Amir Khan fight does make sense. I genuinely see that as a tough fight for Floyd stylistically. Definitely. So we'll see how keen Floyd is for it. Let's have a look. Ralph Musk says Oscar's 42. He's not going to fight Mayweather. Jack says, yeah, Khan's a B+ for heart. Richie says the 50th fight next year is the money fight, free from any TV deals. Who knows what Floyd and Al Heyman are plotting behind the scenes. 49th has to do some numbers though, as he has obligations, but can't see it being Furman or Brook. Maybe Khan, as he does numbers with Khan's following. Yeah, now we're talking about it, potentially, that does make sense. The more we're getting into it, the more realistic I think Khan is. Because I'm seeing it as Khan and Brook being the two front runners, and I think Khan is potentially considered to be the easier fight and the bigger name with the biggest draw. Yeah, I can see it being Khan. I don't see it being Furman, Richie, because he's got a fight in the diary with Lewis Calacho. Jack says, off topic, but what are your thoughts on Ben calling out Eubank for a third fight? Would love to see that. Yeah, bloody hell. That's I don't see that happening these days. I do know that Nigel Benn, and funnily enough, Nigel Benn and Steve Collins' son are both pro boxers now, so you can certainly see Ben versus Eubank in future. I understand Ben's son is quite a big lad. I think he's quite a heavy guy. I don't know what weight he's at, but I think he's bigger than Chris Eubank's son. But you can certainly see Ben versus Eubank Jr. squaring off in 2 or 3 years, or Eubank versus Steve Collins squaring off, certainly. Ralph Moss says the only thing Eubank is fighting over is his need for attention. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that, isn't it? think I heard this on Baylor at TV the other day, and I've certainly seen it on Twitter, that there are some rumours that Chris Eubank Jr. will fight Gennady Golovkin. Apparently, he turned down £1 million for the Billy Joe Saunders fight. And as we know, the reason he did that was because he wanted to retain the WBA interim belt. Now, with that in mind, he can fight either the regular or the super WBA middleweight champion, given that he holds that belt. And apparently the plan is for him to skip Danny Jacobs and fight Gennady Golovkin for the WBA super middleweight title at £160 this year. So, I've been very critical of the Eubanks in my channel over the years, but what I would say is, bloody hell, they are backing their boy if they put him in Gennady Golovkin. Especially if you turn down £1 million to fight Billy Joe Saunders and then you go and fight Gennady Golovkin. Like, whatever you say about the Eubanks, and I think that is mental. That is mental from a business perspective. You have to give them credit for that. You have to give them serious credit for that. That is some balls, I'll say that much. Jack says, if Junior fights Golovkin, he'll piss his pants. Oh my God. And Rothmus says, what an idiot, turning down £1 million to keep an interim belt. That's what I thought. But could you turn down £1 million for a Golovkin fight on the basis that, if they are genuinely confident of beating Golovkin, if Eubank Jr. beats Golovkin, he'll pretty much be able to write his own paychecks going forward. Probably he'll become a global superstar in the boxing world if he achieves that. I mean, there is an argument, and I don't agree with this argument. I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but there is an argument that stylistically, Billy Joe's just not a good fight for him. He can't deal with the slickness, can't deal with the southpaw stance, can't deal with the speed, he can't deal with the amateur jabbing style. There is an argument that someone like Golovkin, who comes for a fight, who's hittable, who gets into a bit of a war, may be a better fight for Chris Eubank Jr. As I say, not my opinion, I'm pretty playing devil's advocate, but yeah, interesting stuff nonetheless. Rothmus says, that's worse than Broner turning down $40 million from Jay-Z. Yeah, I mean, Adrian Broner, like, whether or not that $40 million was ever true or not, God only knows, but for him, it's just horrific mistake after horrific mistake. I mean, the move to 147 was so ill-advised. I honestly believe if he'd been more sensible and, considered his options more thoroughly, he'd be viewed as a pound-for-pound top 10 fighter. I think he could be a dominant champion at 140. I think he could have beaten Matisse. I think he could have beaten Danny Garcia. But due to lack of discipline, due to lack of sense, he's rolled the dice too much. He's turned down supposedly very good money, and he's, took fights that stylistically just don't add up for him. Jack said, if they had a war, I don't see it lasting that long. I don't think Eubank hits as hard as people make out. Golovkin would wear him down. Yeah, I don't think Eubank hits hard, to be honest. Not at that level. If you look at the guys he fought before the Billy Joe fight, the best people he was in were the likes of Ty and Booth, Bradley Price. He's fighting English level fighters. He was fighting guys who are a weight class below him. He stepped up in class. He went 12 with Billy Joe Saunders, and he went 12 against Chudinov. Suddenly the amazing knockout streak seemed to end all of a sudden when he stepped up in class. So I don't see Eubank as a big puncher. Having said that, look at the guys Golovkin's been in with. Daniel Gill's not a big puncher. Martin Murray's not a big puncher. Matthew Macklin's not a big puncher. I mean, there are guys like Marco Antonio Rubio, guys like Curtis Stevens, who are solid punchers, but not exceptional punchers. So GTG is very hittable. I mean, I've got a comment here from Rothmas. He says, Golovkin's chin is made of adamantium, though. Eubank Jr. hits hard, but how hard? Can't see him beating Golovkin on points. But I see, this is the thing. Golovkin's chin is very unproven. Very unproven. He has not. Look at the guys at the top of the middleweight division, right? Miguel Cotto, David Lemieux, Andy Lee, Peter Quillen. These guys all hit very, very, very hard. They are all massive punchers at the weight. Peter Quillen is a hugely underrated puncher. Andy Lee, we know his knockout power. Cotto, we've seen how he's run for opponents recently. These guys can whack. Golovkin has never been in with anyone like that. Never. Golovkin's best opponents, look at his recent run of opponents. Willie Monroe Jr., he had something like 6 knockouts. Martin Murray is famously feather-fisted. Murray was hitting him all over the shop. There is an argument that if Golovkin steps up in weight, or if he fights one of these elite level punchers, the Quillens of this world, the Andy Lees of this world, that when he gets hit on the chin, then we'll know how good he is. Then we'll know how good his chin actually is. Rothmas says he's never been knocked down in the pros or in like 300 amateur fights. Well, I don't know that, and the truth is that these 300 amateur fights, like we don't really know what happened in them, do we? There's no box rec for amateur fights where we can look and see whether he's been knocked down in any of them. How do we really? For all we know, he went through life or death in his 7th amateur fight. But regardless of that, the amateur game is a different game, isn't it? He'll have been wearing a head guard, he'll have been wearing heavy gloves. It's a different game. I'm not saying, look, Golovkin has clearly got an okay chin. He's clearly not got a glass jaw. It's not as simple as you hit this guy and knock him out. Now, he's proven he's got an okay chin. He may well have a world-class chin. What I'm just saying is, from my perspective, right here, right now, Golovkin's chin is only proven to be decent. It's not proven to be excellent. It's certainly not proven to be adamantium. I mean, the same, and we must say this is for Chris Eubank Jr. People say Eubank Jr. has got a great chin, but again, for me, you have a great chin if you go in with a guy like Andy Lee and don't get dropped. But you go in with a guy like Peter Quillen and don't get dropped. I'm Billy Joe Saunders' biggest fan, but the fact that you go 12 with Billy Joe Saunders doesn't mean you've got a great chin. I mean, Billy Joe Saunders is a great technician, but a puncher he is not. So that's my thoughts on both of those two guys. And for this reason, in terms of Golovkin's next fights, I think there's a lot of interesting fights out there for Golovkin, and one of them is David Lemieux. I make Golovkin a big favourite in that fight. I think Golovkin hits harder. I think he's better technically. And I think Lemieux also may have a chin problem. But you can't rule Lemieux out, because Lemieux genuinely hits so hard that who's to know how Golovkin reacts when he takes one on the whiskers from Lemieux. And I think there's more fighters than that. I've already named a few, but the other one I'd throw in is Canelo Alvarez. I expect Canelo Alvarez to beat Miguel Cotto when they fight. And that may well set up a fight between Canelo and Golovkin. And Canelo is, I know he fights a light middleweight, but he's not a smaller man than Golovkin, Canelo is a big puncher, and I see him coming into the ring, not being outsized by Golovkin, and that would be another test. Rothmas agrees. He says Lemieux would test his chin. Jack says, yeah, that would be a good fight. So all of these fights out there. Anyway, I've been rambling on for over half an hour now. Stay on for another bit longer. But let me know your comments on any boxing issues, anything you want to hear me discuss. Floyd Mayweather, I've kind of gone off topic badly here, but that's no bad thing. Let me know who you'd like to see him fight in terms of next opponents. Rothmas says, Lemieux's got too many flaws. Golovkin would capitalise. Yeah, I mean, in all likelihood, Golovkin wins that fight. But what I don't rule out is Lemieux causing Golovkin hell in round one and really testing his chin. And who's to know whether Golovkin will pass or fail that test? At present, it's just too much of an intangible, isn't it? Like, clearly, Golovkin is the better amateur, the more accomplished technician. And I think he's got the edge in power. Better by far, says really thought Canelo was going to beat Mayweather. Remarkable, he turned pro at 15. Yeah, I mean, that Mayweather performance over Canelo, that's a very underrated performance. Very underrated. In years to come, that could well go down as Mayweather's best performance in my eyes. That was absolute domination. And Mayweather beat him by coming forward, and he dominated him. He humiliated him. He totally outclassed him. You know, and Canelo may well go on to be a pound-for-pound fighter. Canelo may well go on to be a legend of the sport. So yeah, that was spot on from Mayweather, and he proved his class and his dominance in that fight. But yeah, Canelo's a serious fighter. He's a serious fighter. What he struggles against is real slick defensive technicians. You know, I see a guy like Demetrius Andrade giving Canelo real problems. You know, we've seen that guys like Austin Trout, guys like Erislandy Lara, guys like Floyd Mayweather can cause him nightmares. But where Canelo could be at his best is against guys like Cotto, against guys like Golovkin, and that's why it's very entertaining. Ruffmar says, how do you see Smith versus Regrassi going on Friday? Good proving ground for Smith. Yeah, I've done a video on this one. I've actually got a bet on the fight with one of my subscribers. My subscriber thinks that it's a very, very easy fight for Callum Smith and he'll win by knockout early on. But I completely disagree. I think Smith is hugely overrated and overhyped by Sky. I think he's very upright, very stiff, very robotic. I think he's got good power to the body, but less power to the head. And I think Regrassi is an underrated fighter. I don't think Regrassi's got enough power to knock out Smith, and I don't think Regrassi's got enough technique to outpoint Smith. So I do think Smith wins the fight, but I think Regrassi could make him look decidedly average. You know, Regrassi is very big at the weight. He's strong. He's very durable, and he's tough on the inside as well. You know, I don't see Callum Smith as a puncher in George Groves' league, and he made George Groves look average at best. Like the bet I've got with my subscriber thinks that Callum Smith gets him out of there within 6 rounds. I've said no way. I see this being a points win for Callum Smith. I could see it being something like 9 rounds to 3, 8 rounds to 4. I could see Callum Smith definitely doing enough to get the job done, but I don't think it's going to be a performance that leaves people thinking he's ready for James DeGale or Andre Ward. Anyway, I've rambled on for long enough tonight. Thanks everyone who's joined in. Thanks for watching. To conclude, I'm thinking Amir Khan is the most likely opponent for Floyd Mayweather at this stage, based on commercial factors and based on availability. If you're watching this, please give me the thumbs up if you like what I'm doing. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. That certainly helps me out at this end. One final question, Rough Must has just popped up. Do you think Groves beats Smith? Yes, I do. I think Groves is a smoother operator with more tools to his armory, whereas I think Smith is very robotic, very upright, and will get found out to lack versatility at the top level. Thanks everyone for watching. Have a good evening. Got some videos coming later tonight. I've filmed already, so please check those out. Have a good evening.